skeletal muscles have to be stimulated by a nerve to contract. This is part of the excitability of muscles, is that they're able to be stimulated. And it's also part of the voluntary part of skeletal muscles. You can give a signal from your brain to have a muscle contract, and nerves actually go out to that particular muscle and signal it to contract. Now, a motor unit is one neuron and all of the muscle cells that are stimulated by that neuron. You can see in this picture how one nerve leaves the spinal cord and it branches at the end so that it can actually stimulate, in this case, 3 muscle fibers, but it could stimulate thousands, even tens of thousands of muscle fibers. In motor units that are responsible for really fine little movements, like the nerves going to your fingers, for example, for little writing movements, or your eyes to focus on a page, those are very fine-tuned motor units. There are also motor units like the motor unit going to your hamstrings, where one nerve has lots and lots of different muscle fibers, so it gives a pretty strong movement. Where the nerve meets the muscle and a signal goes from the nerve to a muscle is called a neuromuscular junction. Makes sense, right? Nervous, muscles, neuromuscular junction. You need to be able to kind of look at a picture of the neuromuscular junction and recognize the parts and what's going on. So the big yellow thing coming down is the end of a nerve that's meeting this particular one muscle fiber. The nerve at the end has these little vesicles that have neurotransmitters in them. At skeletal muscles, that neurotransmitter is all called acetylcholine. So when the signal comes down, it signals the acetylcholine to be released from the end of the nerve. It goes across the little space between the nerve and the muscle cell and binds to acetylcholine receptors on the sarcolemma, which is the name for the membrane, the plasma membrane of the muscle cell. So the nerve doesn't actually touch the muscle, but it releases the acetylcholine, which can kind of diffuse across the little space and bind to acetylcholine receptors. When acetylcholine receptors have been bound by the acetylcholine, that actually opens a sodium channel and allows sodium to rush into the cell. The sodium changes the charge on the cell, and in this picture you can see at the top there's the nerve touching different skeletal muscle fibers. That allows the acetylcholine to be released from the nerve and go across the little space, and then on the right you see a big blow up of that little space where it binds to the acetylcholine receptors and then opens a sodium channel which allows sodium to come into the cell. That is said to depolarize the cell. That depolarization goes along the sarcolemma, down those T tubules, and allows calcium to be released. Remember, calcium stored in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. When that calcium is released, it actually allows the myosin to bind to the actin, the thick and thin filaments in a sarcomere, remember? And that pulls the thin filaments relative to the thick filaments to allow for a shortening of the muscle fiber of the sarcomere, which will shorten the entire fiber, it's attached to the whole muscle by connective tissue, so the whole thing shortens and contracts. That is the sliding filament theory, starting from a nerve impulse going all the way to the muscle contracting. Now, once a nerve has fired, the contraction of the muscle fiber is all or none. Once that signal comes in and the cell depolarizes, the entire fiber will contract. You can't get like part of a cell contracting. The the whole thing will contract. But it's just a motor unit. It's just that nerve and the individual muscle fiber cells that nerve stimulated. So it wouldn't necessarily be your entire bicep muscle, for example. If you had several different motor units that tell your different fibers in your bicep muscle to contract, you might have one signal for picking up a piece of paper. Oh, we only need one motor unit for that because we only need a few fibers to contract. Whereas if you're going to pick up a gallon of milk, it says, oh, we need more motor units because we need more of that bicep to contract. So you can get graded responses or different amounts of contraction by getting more motor units or less motor units involved. So the number of fibers stimulated, more fibers stimulated, you'll get much stronger tension in the muscle. And muscles will keep contracting. You can tell them to contract and hold. They will keep contracting until they run out of energy. So really, how long a muscle fiber can keep going is about how much energy they have.